everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rosini, our co host. Chris, good to have you with us this morning.
Great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. And today we have a couple of things we're going to do. We're going to be talking about legislation introduced to solve the problems of people who are demonstrating on college campuses, and somebody's proposing some punishment. And we'll talk about that a little bit because it's the type of punishment that libertarians ought to resent. But before we do that, I want to talk about something we generally talk about to some degree on Fridays, because we talk about gold, we talk about the markets. And right now, today, we are still witnessing the continuation of a very strong gold market, which means a very, very weak period of time for our dollar. I can't help avoiding ever to say about the price of gold because it's so commonplace. But I always say in my brain that it's not the price of gold as much as it is the devaluation of the dollar. The dollar goes down in value and the ratio changes, and that's been going on for a long time. But still, the average person looks at the prices of gold and immediately reflects on this. And gold in the last weeks and months it's been very, very strong. There was a time a year or so ago, I think it was in 2016, gold had been up to $1,800 and it dipped back to $1,000. And it looked like it was going to go down a lot more. Then all of a sudden it switched. And I like to look at the long term. And there's been about 3 or 4 times when gold, doubled and tripled and quadrupled if you go all the way back to the Bretton Woods. And I thought, I wonder how long this is going to go. And that was in 2016. And I believe it was a point in time that the markets turned around, and the gold is really, if you're looking at charts and things, is in a bull phase right now, because it's more than doubled. 1,000 to 2,000 is pretty significant. But what I had compared to that time was the fact that other times when gold would do that, would stall out, go down, or be frozen, and then sometimes it would go up, not 1 or 2 times, but many times. If you look at gold going from 35 up to 800, that's a big jump. So that to me said that gold is going up a whole lot. If my little analysis, and I'm not I don't invest by technical factors, and I don't advise it, but I do it for entertainment. And yet this has been entertaining to me, because it was in 2016. I thought, wow, this could be a big run on gold. And that is what's happening. And of course, people say, well, why is it doing it right now? And I think most people that listen to our program, they have a pretty darn good idea why, because they understand the relationship of the dollars, to the gold. And right now there's a fruition of what was happening, even 10 years ago, because the money supply has been, especially, in more recent years, that the money supply had soared, especially with QE, when they were frightened about a downturn. They have to print out the money, stimulate the economy, and then we'll bring on if it gets out of control, we'll just bring on a depression. And that's the way they do it. They did this, and it had an effect immediately, but a lot of times when they appropriate money and authorize the money, it sits because they're not good managers, but they know how to print money just in case they need it, And even with COVID, there's still billions, if not trillions of dollars sitting around that they have there to take care, of the problems they had with COVID. But the worst thing about that is maybe what they're thinking about is another artificial pandemic with another virus. And there are people who want that, but let's hope that doesn't happen. I hope the people have wised up with that. So it is something that is there, and it's coming up because people say, well, they're not printing money today any faster than I did yesterday, but the money is out there, and it takes a long time to really circulate and alter all the markets, because the measuring rod, which is the value of the dollar, has been distorted, and and so nobody knows how long that will be absorbed into the market. But we're still actively printing it, so that's why it's going to continue. That's why gold is so important. It's so important because it's a reflection of runaway government, and people want to know what to do. We partner with Birch Gold Company for that precise reason, because Birch Gold offers some information, on what one can do, because they, like I, believe that, just putting your money in the Dow Jones, although the Dow Jones has been up a lot, which is understandable, but stocks and other things that are more conventional, there's a bubble there, and people are looking more now than probably in my memory. There's so many companies, trying to offer advice and what to do, and this is a sign that people should pay attention. I think information is very important. I still look at all the information, that I can get on people's opinion, but Birch Gold offers some free information to explain some of the things that you can do, to move from one investment to another, and that is get out of the stocks and have a gold IRA account. And it's something that is becoming more popular, but it's a way to get some protection, a little bit of insurance, have it, and then not worry from day to day. If gold was up 300 yesterday, but down 500 tomorrow or something like that, you just don't have to waste a lot of energy there. But it's sort of like if you have a life insurance policy or something else, you don't go looking at it and look at the value each day. But to have some insurance, that's the way I look at it, is very, very important when the big bust comes, and that's what I believe in. So if you'd like to get some of that information, what you can do is you can text Ron 989898, and that will get you to Birch Gold, and they will send you the information and material to help you along in getting involved in this. But this, to me, is very important, that there is protection. There's a lot of things, and people have written books on how you survive the tough times that a lot of people anticipate, and we've had before. I'm convinced that we are going to have a big bust, and there's going to be a lot of problems. Of course, I worry about and hope a lot of people are protected. Ultimately, though, my big argument is what we need is protection of our liberty. And no matter what happens, if we have our liberty, we will recover. But right now, that's under attack too. So once again, if you want to get more information from Birch Gold, text Ron 989898, and you will be able to get some of this information that I'm talking about. So this is something that's ongoing. We're going to go, and I think of it as insurance and not a magic pill that you buy gold this week and sell it next week. My personality wasn't like that, and I don't think that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about insurance against the madness of Washington and the deficits going up, and the printing of the money. So it is a bad situation. But Chris, we wanted to talk also about something going on with the excitement in Washington about the fight going on about what do we do with these protesters. The universities are very much involved in all our universities. Obviously, they're not private universities, and therefore, demonstrators and all, assume, and rightly so, a place where they can express themselves. I don't think they have the right to destroy your property and all that, but it's not. Universities are not private, and therefore it opens up the door. But it's really, really getting pretty wild, and people are concerned about it. But the big question we have to ask is, what are the protesters protesting? And in this case, most of the libertarians and constitutionalists saying, well, maybe they're protesting another illegal war going on. What's happening, the protests in the 60s were huge, larger than what we have right now. And that was because we got into a war unnecessarily. There weren't that many demonstrations to get us out of Afghanistan, but that was a disaster because we got into a war the wrong way. And that is the biggest issue. And now the question is, what should we do with these people that are even opposed, to the people, the protesters, and saying we shouldn't even protest? And if they know that people are protesting against the military-industrial complex and other things, and also when you throw in the controversial fight between Israelis and Palestinians, that gets very emotional and very serious. And then you want to say, well, what side are we on? What side should we support? Well, that's going to be hard to figure out because we support both sides of most all wars, and except for one group of people, and that's the American taxpayer, American liberty. So, Chris, we have a problem there, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better after we notice a little bit of the legislation just recently passed that will not solve the problem.
Right, Dr. Paul. And, I can't help but draw the parallels between the COVID tyranny that we went through and how the protesters are being treated. First of all, there's the branding. So everyone I'm sure remembers, if you were unvaccinated, you were anti-science and you were anti-vax. No matter what you said, no matter what science you had on your side, no matter if you were vaxxed, all your life, but you didn't want this one. Anti-vax, anti-science. Well, the protesters, same thing. Anti-Semitic, pro-terrorist, pro-jihadis, they're branded immediately. And it could be not true at all. I'm sure there's bad actors, there always are. But to call all these kids pro-terrorists, I mean, come on, that's absurd. And the next thing, that happened was to punish hard. The unvaccinated were supposed to be, if everything worked out, quote unquote, second-class citizens, where you couldn't participate in society. If you were unvaccinated, you had to wait outside like a leper, and the food would be brought out to you. You can't come in here. You didn't have the jabs. Well, it's the same thing with the anti-war protesters. Expel them. Really hit them hard. And like we're talking about today, there's actual legislation to send them to Gaza. Anti-war protesters to be sent over to war that they're protesting. It's insanity. But that's how COVID was. It was insanity. And if you notice, the government is always unified. It is really a uni-party. They leave their side out to dry. The right was left out to dry, and now the left is being left out to dry. The left can protest anything, 99% of what they want. They could go out into the streets. They could make stuff up. I have a right to this. I have a right to that. But they cannot protest this. They can't protest America supporting this, what is happening over there in Israel and Gaza. And that should really wake some people up. How people are treated, both left and right. It's always serving this uni-party that's in power.
This episode of people protesting reminds me of the 1960s, because it turned out that a lot of protests were going on, and a lot of them were very dangerous, and people died here in the United States over all this. And the one thing is back then there was a complaint, because if you were opposed to the war, you were unpatriotic, and you didn't care, and you were undermining national security. And they use those terms even today when there's these bills passing in Congress, the routine boondoggles on the military-industrial complex. You're unpatriotic. You don't support the troops, and and they're doing the same thing again and trying to put you in this position. But what they want to do, though, is to emphasize this. Back then it was okay. You're protesting. Protesting communism and the sort of the problem. Well, why don't you just go to Russia and live there? Live under the Soviet system. It's to make a point, because they don't have any understanding of what's really going on and what the people are protesting. And yet the same slogan is try to mock the person that's protesting, and that's why it's much better for me to try to make the argument on the principle. And I think also what we neglect so often, if we obeyed the Constitution and had a lot more respect for private property, protesting what was going on with the government would be a lot different and less dangerous. Because once the government owns everything, and yet nobody has any real responsibility for it, and that means that people are feel more free to go and protest and cause problems and have riots and all these things. But it's just one of their techniques. Try to mock the people who are protesting, and then they go on and promote their cause. Which sometimes, if you look at it, Chris, what has been astounding, and you and I have talked about this a lot, how amazing it is, how many bipartisan people, Republicans as well as Democrats, support this kind of stuff, and they're just intimidated that they have to go along with it, and it gets very, very emotional. Instead of seeing this from an American viewpoint, a constitutional viewpoint, it's seen from some bitter wars going on for a long time. I mean, if you take the fighting that has gone on in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, that's been going on a long time, and this is something that people really get emotional about, and they don't think a whole lot about a non-interventionist foreign policy. They talk about the immediate problem that we see and feel and have to deal with. At the same time, they don't ask, how did we get into this mess? How did we get to this point where a congressman gets up and says, well, if you say that again on the college campuses, we're going to arrest you and send you to Gaza to suffer the consequences. And it may be that the person they're arresting, you can be sure that they're not going to, how are they going to only arrest and punish the guilty people? That whole thing. So it's a bad move, but I don't think we emphasize enough is how do we set things up where we get involved in these. And when you think about it, whether it was Vietnam, Korean War, the Middle East wars, Afghanistan, and what's going on right now, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's preventable. But people say, "Oh yeah, you just want to trash America. You don't believe in America." Well, maybe the people who brag about America first might think that maybe liberty comes first, and America should be capable of dealing with that.
Excellent, Dr. Paul. Yes, one way to be able to not fall for it, because you mentioned emotions, and that's what all propaganda is about. It's to get you to be emotional rather than logical, rather than examining your conscience. So in this case, it's always focus on the protesters themselves, them personally, not what they're protesting. Ignore all of that. Focus on their blue hair. They're funny looking. Oh, they're messy. They're communists. The list goes on and on about specifically these people. And that's to make sure, the people on the right tend to favor this war, at least what they know about it. And that's to make sure that they don't get all wobbly-kneed and start asking more questions. So you always have to keep these things. They're commies. They're just commies. Soros funds them. Greta Thunberg is out there. They put these pictures in your face so that you don't start asking any questions. But who cares if Greta Thunberg? I don't agree with her on this climate stuff. But if she says that the U.S. should not be backing this, sending money and weapons to Israel, she's right in this case. And I would go even further. Not just Israel, no country in the world should be getting money and weapons from us. She who knows if she would go that far. That's how far I would go. Don't just single out Israel. So it doesn't matter if it's Greta Thunberg. What is she protesting? And that you just don't even, you're not supposed to think about. You're just supposed to think about, they're blue-haired commies, and I can't possibly agree with them. And that's how, for the most part, people are kept in line supporting a war that is really nasty if they actually looked into what was happening. So yeah, emotions that's how it works. That's how it's always worked with propaganda, Dr. Paul.
There's I think of our foreign policy as being schizophrenic because you just can't predict it and it's all over the place. And one example of this is occurring right now. They built this floating pier, on the coast of Gaza there, and the excuse for this was to help get some goods in there to help the people who are starving and being chewed up by a lot of bombs. And and they're doing that at the same time as the bombs falling down. We're building the floating pier, and it's being attacked because there's somebody that doesn't like it there. At the same time, we do this. They want to continue this thing because there's somebody who wants to get rid of it, and and we pay for the bombs. It just goes on and on. It doesn't make any sense at all on what they're doing. That's why the non-intervention, mind our own business, stay out of entangling alliances, and come home in almost all these areas is something else. But when the emotions build high, and they are right now, this whole thing of so I'm sort of negatively impressed with how powerful some of these demonstrations are, and how much danger is going on. But people feel very strongly about this, and this is not going to go away easily. And this whole idea, one thing that happened this past week that made a difference is the president was very strong in. Don't they can't we can't send any weapons in, and then when the resistance started building, he switched his policies. He says, okay, you object to the weapons going on. Okay, we'll cancel that, and that sort of thing, back and forth, because that's what schizophrenia in politics does. It makes you all scattered brain, and it changes by minute, and can literally change by minutes at least. Frequently, policy changes within one day, and something happens. Oh boy, bing! And when some of the bigger events occur, that's when I get really worried about it, because the reaction then might be a lot worse and more devastating than somebody introducing legislation saying, "Quit doing that thing. You shouldn't be doing this. And if you don't behave, we're going to send you, and you can experience life in Gaza." Chris?
Very good, Dr. Paul. I will finish up by saying, talking about the Uni Party in general, and how they use this left-right divide to take away our freedoms. And it really doesn't matter to them which side they use at any particular time. They use divide and rule. The best analogy I could think of, it's not a perfect analogy, is think of the NFL, where you have different teams. Let's say in the Super Bowl, the Patriots and the Eagles, there's two teams, they're fighting each other, and all the people they have their jerseys, and they're so passionate, they'll even fist fight in the crowd over their teams. But do you think to the NFL it really matters which side wins? No. The NFL wins no matter who wins the Super Bowl, because it's the NFL. They have the whole thing. Well, that's how the Uni Party works with the Democrat and Republican Party. People, they go nuts for their team. They'll even fist fight the other team. But the Uni Party doesn't care which one wins in the moment. They will win as long as they get more power and more of our freedom taken away. And that's why you saw during COVID, the right was very good against the woke stuff. Oh, man, they were so anti-woke. But the moment this Israel thing started, the right is as woke as anybody else. They are no different. And, the same thing during COVID. We always hear about the left. They hate corporations, these big corporations, big money in our politics. And during COVID, they did everything and advocated everything possible that benefited big corporations. I saw Moderna, I think during the height, made some $1 billion, 1.9 billion, and now they're making 100 million because nobody wants the jabs. But the left was all for it and trying to force everyone to take it. So this is how they play both sides against each other, and both sides will sell out. They don't care about freedom if they could just beat that other team. Extracting yourself from this is very hard for people. It's like getting yourself out of a cult. But hopefully, once you understand how this thing works against you, you can slowly move away and not be taken advantage of.
Very good. The effort to settle this dispute that's going on, and the argument and the threat of violence really is a dangerous thing. The author of the bill had something to say. The bill to punish people who speak out, and I don't really think that this bill is going to pass next week. That all of a sudden they're going to round up 10,000 people or 2,000 or people. That's not going to happen. The people won't endorse it because it's over the top. But it's just the whole principle of somebody thinking this is what we should do. I hope I'm not wrong on that, and I hope it doesn't turn into shipping people off. But this is what the author said: if you support a terrorist organization and you participate in unlawful activity, who's going to find that on campuses? You should get a taste of your own medicine. I'm going to bet that these pro-Hamas supporters wouldn't last a day, but let's give them the opportunity. And to assume that they say Hamas is different than Palestinian. Yeah, who's going to do all this sorting out? And especially since we shouldn't even be there, we shouldn't have to do any sorting out, deciding who's going to get punished. I am, but this is the principle of it is that they shouldn't be saying it. They don't have a right to say about it. Our position there, being there, and the sides that we pick on is perfect, and we don't have to deal with the liberties and the money of the American citizens. You can neglect the cause of what we're doing by concentrating on this punishment that we have by saying that you cannot speak out and pretending that they have the wisdom to decide who's guilty and who isn't. I think I think more of the guilt is on the people who orchestrates and create these problems and these wars, and that's what I would like to see stopped. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.